I used to believe I had everything I needed: a comfortable home, a caring husband, and a son who was the light of my life. Adil and I had been married for over a decade, and though our marriage wasn't perfect, I never imagined it was broken. He was always polite, responsible, and rarely raised his voice. But somewhere along the line, he began drifting away. At first, I thought it was work stress. Long meetings, late hours, unanswered texts. I told myself not to overthink it. Every marriage goes through dull phases. I convinced myself we'd get past it. But slowly, something began to feel off. The way he'd avoid eye contact. How quickly he'd shut off his phone when I entered the room. His smile seemed forced, his presence temporary. The connection we once had was fading into silence, and I felt like I was living beside a stranger. Our conversations became mechanical. What time is Zion's school event? Did you pay the bills? Is dinner ready? Not once did he ask how I was. I started paying attention more closely. A subtle scent that didn't belong to me on his shirt. Receipts from restaurants we hadn't visited together. Excuses that didn't add up. And yet, I stayed quiet, hoping it was all in my head, hoping he'd return to the man I remembered. Zion kept me grounded. At 10, he was wise beyond his years. Sensitive, thoughtful. He noticed everything, even when we tried to pretend nothing was wrong. He'd glance between us at the dinner table, sensing the tension, the distance. I could see questions forming in his little eyes, but he never asked. I didn't want him to grow up in a broken home. I wanted to preserve what little normalcy we had left. For him. For us. For the image I clung to. One night, I heard whispers coming from the balcony. Adil was speaking softly, his voice almost affectionate. When I walked in, he immediately ended the call. Said it was a client. But I saw the guilt in his eyes. The way he avoided my gaze. The way his hands trembled slightly. I said nothing. I didn't want a confrontation I wasn't ready for. Maybe I was scared of the truth. Maybe a part of me still wanted to believe in the life we'd built. I tried everything to bridge the growing gap. Planned small date nights, cooked his favorite meals, even suggested a weekend away. But he always had a reason to say no. Too busy, too tired, not the right time. I felt invisible, like a ghost haunting my own marriage. And still, I said nothing. I'd lie awake at night, next to a man who no longer touched me, wondering where I went wrong, wondering what I lacked. Was it my appearance? My routine? Did I stop being exciting? Had motherhood dulled me? Yet, even in those quiet moments of doubt, I never stopped loving him. I kept hoping he'd notice the effort, that he'd remember who we used to be. But deep down, I started bracing myself, preparing for something I couldn't quite name yet. A storm was coming. I could feel it. I just didn't know when it would arrive. And I didn't know how hard it would hit. There were days he was completely absent, not just physically but emotionally. Zion would ask where he was, and I'd lie, saying he was working late. The lies tasted bitter, but I told them anyway. For stability, for comfort, for fear. I started keeping my emotions locked away, smiling during school drop-offs, attending parent meetings alone, carrying on as if everything was normal. On the outside, I held it together, but inside, I was fraying at the edges. Every ignored message, every cold glance, chipped away at the foundation of my trust. Still, I couldn't bring myself to confront him. I needed to be sure. I needed something concrete. Because once I asked the question, once I opened that door, there'd be no going back. So I waited, observed, hoped I was wrong. But in my heart, I already knew. The man I loved was slipping away, and I didn't know how to stop him. The confirmation came on a Thursday. He had forgotten to log out of his email on the family laptop. I wasn't searching for anything, but it found me. Dozens of messages between him and someone named Nimra. The way he wrote to her, it was intimate, personal, filled with laughter and longing. They weren't just exchanging words. They were building something behind my back. She called him my man. He told her he couldn't wait to be free. I scrolled in disbelief, my stomach twisting, my hands ice cold. There were plans, hotel bookings, photos. It was more than an affair. It was a second life. When he came home, I didn't scream. I just showed him the messages. He looked at me, not with guilt, but with a strange calm, like he had expected this moment. He didn't deny it. In fact, he said he didn't want to lie anymore, that he and Nimra had been seeing each other for a while, that he hadn't felt truly alive in years. He blamed the routine, the lack of excitement, said he felt like a guest in his own home. I asked if our son meant nothing, if I meant nothing. He didn't answer right away, just stood there, like a man too tired to fight. That he said he never meant to hurt anyone, that he didn't plan for it to go this far, that it just happened. The way people talk when they've already decided. I asked if he loved her. His silence said enough. The man I'd built my life with, who once held our newborn with tears in his eyes, now looked at me like I was just someone he used to know. He packed a small bag that night and left. No drama, no shouting, just a quiet exit. Zion asked where he went. I told him his father needed some time. He looked at me with worry, but didn't press. I knew he was absorbing everything, even what wasn't said. I locked myself in the bathroom and cried like I hadn't in years. Not just for the betrayal, but for the years I gave, the compromises I made, the loyalty I maintained even when I felt alone. I thought of all the birthdays, the anniversaries, the quiet sacrifices. And now, I was left with a hollow echo. The nights were the hardest. The silence in the house became unbearable. I missed the presence, even if it had turned cold. I missed the illusion. It was safer than the truth. Every morning felt like a performance. I'd get up, make breakfast, pack Zion's bag, pretend like I wasn't unraveling. I kept telling myself to hold on for his sake. But even he could see through the cracks. Friends called, asked if everything was okay. I lied, said he was on a work trip, said things were fine. I wasn't ready for sympathy, or judgment, or pity. I needed time to process what I had just lost. Adil didn't contact me for days, not even to ask about Zion, as if we were chapters he had closed, as if the life we built together could be discarded that easily. The betrayal wasn't just about love. It was about identity. I had been a wife for so long. I didn't know who I was without that label. I started to question everything. Was it all fake? Did he ever really love me? Or was I just convenient? The questions came in waves, each one cutting deeper than the last. But even in the pain, I kept moving. Because I had no choice. Because Zion still needed his mother. And I wasn't going to let him feel abandoned by both parents that I didn't beg him to return. I didn't chase. I let him go. But inside, I was breaking in ways I couldn't explain. I had believed in forever. And now, I was starting over at zero. With nothing but questions, silence, and a child who deserved better than a broken home. The first week after he left felt like I was walking through fog. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt familiar. I moved on autopilot, waking up, making breakfast, helping Zion get ready, answering work emails. But every task carried weight. The silence in the house wasn't peaceful, it was hollow. His absence echoed in every corner. And yet, somehow, I still caught myself checking the door, expecting it to open. It never did. Zion started withdrawing. He stopped asking about his father. That silence hurt more than questions ever could. His laughter faded, and his appetite shrank. He'd sit quietly during meals, eyes fixed on his plate. I wanted to reach him, but I didn't know how. I wasn't sure if I even had enough in me to carry my own pain, let alone carry his. Nights were the hardest. I'd cry in the shower so he wouldn't hear. I didn't want him to feel responsible for my sadness. I didn't want to confuse him with my grief. I started journaling just to let things out. I wrote letters I'd never sent, to Adil, to myself, to the version of me that once believed in unbreakable vows. It helped a little, not enough to stop the hurt, but enough to keep moving. People started noticing the change. A friend asked if everything was all right. I gave a practiced smile and said I was just tired. I wasn't ready to share what happened. There's a shame that comes with being left, even when you're not the one who broke the trust. Society has a way of turning broken marriages into whispered gossip. I wasn't going to let anyone reduce my pain to dinner table conversation that I found a part-time job working from home. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Bills needed to be paid. Life wouldn't pause just because mine had unraveled. I looked at my son and realized I couldn't afford to fall apart. He needed stability. He needed strength. So I began building small routines. Morning walks with him, story time before bed, Sunday pancakes. Tiny rituals that gave our days a rhythm. There were moments when I caught myself smiling. Not because I was healed, but because I was surviving. I realized that surviving itself was a kind of victory. I started reading again. Books I had forgotten I loved. I started listening to music while cleaning, letting the rhythm distract me from the ache. I even joined an online support group under a fake name. Reading other women's stories made me feel less alone. Betrayal wasn't rare, but recovery. That was the real challenge. Adil didn't call. He didn't check in, not even to ask about Zion. Weeks turned into months, and Adil's silence became permanent. He never called, never visited, never asked about his son. It stunned me at first, but over time, I stopped expecting anything from him. Whatever part of him once felt like home was gone, and I had to accept that. The man I once knew had chosen to walk away, and I had no power to make him care. What I could control, though, was the life I was rebuilding slowly, painfully. But surely, I focused on creating consistency for Zion. We started having small conversations again. He asked simple questions, and I answered honestly, age appropriately. I didn't speak ill of his father. I just told him the truth that sometimes grown-ups stop choosing each other, but that never meant a child was less loved. He seemed to understand in the way kids do, quietly, deeply, without needing many words. He clung to me more, but he also smiled more. That gave me purpose. The job I took began to grow. I picked up freelance work on the side, managing small clients from home. It kept me busy, gave me something of my own. For the first time in years, I felt capable outside the role of wife or mother. I was still healing, still hurt, but I wasn't dependent anymore. The fear that used to grip me, how will I survive alone, started fading. I was already surviving. Alone, yes, but not broken. There were nights I still missed Adil, not who he became, but who he once was. The laughter we shared, the way he held Zion when he was a baby, the promises we made when we were both younger and less tired. Those memories didn't vanish just because he betrayed me. They stayed, sometimes resurfacing at the worst moments. But even those memories began to lose their sting. I stopped looking at them with longing. They became part of a story I no longer lived in. One afternoon, I saw a picture of Adil and Nimra online. Someone else had shared it. They looked happy, carefree. I stared at it for a few seconds, then scrolled past. I didn't feel anger, just a strange kind of closure. He was someone else's problem now. I had given him everything, my trust, my youth, my loyalty. And in return, he left without looking back. That image didn't hurt me anymore. It confirmed what I already knew. He wasn't mine to grieve. Zion started drawing again. He'd stopped for a long time, but slowly his colors returned. He made a sketch of us, just the two of us, sitting under a tree. When I asked where his father was in the picture, he said, "Maybe he's in another drawing." I didn't press. I just nodded. feeling something tighten in my chest. He wasn't angry, just accepting. And I realized that children don't need perfection. They just need truth. And someone who stays. I began reaching out to people I had lost touch with, old friends, cousins. I started saying yes to coffee invitations, responding to messages I used to ignore. I wasn't ready to open my heart again, not for love, but I was ready for connection. Isolation had protected me during the worst, but I couldn't live in that bubble forever. I needed to reclaim pieces of myself that I had buried in the years of being Adil's wife. I found an old photo album one night, hidden in the back of a drawer. It had pictures from our early years, weddings, road trips, family events. I flipped through them slowly. I didn't cry. I didn't tear the photos. I simply acknowledged that version of my life existed. It wasn't fake. It just ended. People change. Sometimes for better. Sometimes in ways you can't recognize. And love, no matter how deep, isn't always enough to keep someone from leaving. I wasn't chasing closure anymore. I had given myself that. Through pain, through tears, through every step forward. What a deal that defined him. How I responded defined me. And I chose not to let betrayal be the loudest part of my story. There was still a life ahead. And even if it looked different from what I imagined, it was mine to build now. On my own